Hello, and welcome to Alex Rogue and the Crystal Pendant. This week, we will be reading Chapter 6, The Master of Earth. Alex Rogue was written by Ryan Russon and narrated by me, Jordan Levine. We have been overwhelmed by the responses on our YouTube channel, Alex Rogue, with almost 800 downloads so far. Please share the love with your friends and family out there on the internet using the hashtag AlexRogueBook. You can find us on Twitter under AlexRogueBook as well. You can find me, Jordan, at JLevine80 on Twitter. Feel free to connect and give us your notes about Alex Rogue. If this is your first time joining us, go back and listen to chapters 1 through 5 first, and then enjoy chapter 6, The Master of Earth. So without delay, chapter 6. "Hello, Alex," I heard. Opening my eyes as much as I could, I saw Citrus kneeling over me. I was lying on the ground in the same spot I had been when I went unconscious. General Scalabar was nowhere in sight, and there was no trace of the fire. "How long has it been?" I asked him, searching the area for any sign of the cat who had helped me earlier. "About an hour. Master Vince brought me up to speed on the dire situation regarding the Say. Moran came for you, and I got here as fast as I could." "Master Vince?" I asked, confused. "The cat," Citrus answered, climbing to his feet. "But Moran and General Scalabar have retreated. I vanquished the fire he created using my wind power," he said. At that moment, the cat jumped down from the fence. "Are we in need of snake blood or venom at Stardin? I forget," it said to Citrus. "I think we have a sufficient amount at Stardin for the time being. Keep safe the ones that you have," Citrus replied. He then glanced over to me. "I believe I have done all I can. May we meet again at Stardin," he said, smiling. The old man started to become transparent-like. I realized he was morphing into the air, as he had done when we had first met. Finally, he completely disappeared, and I was left alone with the cat. Citrus and I cleaned up the mess from the Say. All evidence of the battle is gone, so your parents won't know. They are away from the house now anyway, he said. I nodded. "So we'll just carry on as if nothing happened?" I asked. "Exactly," the cat said. "See you at Stardin." He winked at me, and its body vanished into the air. "So why have you waited until now to tell me about this whole thing?" I asked my mom a little later in the day, by the time she had returned. She hesitated. "To be honest, we didn't know if you would be invited or not. No one knows until they get the letter, or in your case, until they get the power. That means we must be cautious when discussing Stardin, as not everyone gets invited who presents the talent. Thus, until you are formally invited, it is in everyone's best interest and safety to keep Stardin and its inhabitants a secret. For if someone knew prior to acceptance but they weren't invited, anger could arise." She paused for a moment, thinking of how to word what she was about to say. "Untrained power of the elements can be difficult to contain. Stardin learned that long ago when a young potential student's power became too much to handle." "Who?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not now. It will become known to you at a later point." She stood up and started to go upstairs. "Can't you just tell me?" But she was already gone. By the time she came back down, I knew she wouldn't answer. "When are we leaving?" I asked instead. She glanced down at her watch. "Now, actually," she said. "Are your things packed, honey?" I nodded and went upstairs, returning a few minutes later with a suitcase I had packed. "Then, off we go," my mom said, standing up suddenly. I looked at my dad. "You heard the woman. Off we go," he declared. "Sam, we're leaving. Come on," my mom shouted to my brother upstairs. "Coming," he called back. Soon we were soaring down the road, our house becoming a distant speck in the rearview mirror. It was at that moment I realized I wouldn't see it again for another year. "So I guess this is it then?" Sam asked. He had been informed of the whole thing soon after I had found out. I nodded. "Guess you'll have to build your Lego sets all by yourself now," I told him, laughing. "Guess so," he grinned. I had lived in this neighborhood almost my whole life, and I knew the entire city. But soon we were driving along an old street I didn't recognize. Gazing out the window, I watched as we exited the town and came into the countryside. Where would a subway be out here? I thought. And then, as if by magic, an old abandoned subway building appeared in the middle of a field. There was no city around for miles. I didn't question it because I knew this start-in place was full of strange things. But regardless, it was still something I wouldn't expect to see. My dad parked the car and slowly climbed out, gazing at the old building. "It's been almost 20 years, he said to himself, nostalgically yearning for his years of learning and tomfoolery at Start-in. I got out of the car. "So, there's an actual subway that goes through here?" I asked. He suddenly snapped back into reality. "Kind of," my dad said, still admiring the building. "What do you mean, kind of?" He didn't respond. Why was he so in love with this building? Paint flaked off of it, and cracks ran through the old brick. Graffiti stained most of the outside of it. "What's so special about this building?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "It just brings back such amazing memories and defining experiences. I came here for the first time when I was your age." He paused and laughed. "I asked my dad the same thing, and he answered just as I did." We entered the building and walked down the stairs after everyone got out of the car. The stone was chipped, and sometimes whole portions of the stairs were gone. When we reached the bottom, we saw a mess. Papers lay scattered everywhere on the ground, graffiti coated almost every square inch of the walls, and only a few dim lights hung around the place. The rest had shattered bulbs and no longer produced light. As for the tunnels themselves, they looked run down, but still usable. "Sit with me, Alex. The subway should be here in a few minutes," my dad said, pointing to a long bench in front of the track. I did as he instructed, and then he joined me at the bench. My mom and Sam sat at one parallel to ours. We sat in silent anticipation, each deep in thought. "There it is," Sam said, hearing the faint rumble of the train. True to my dad's word, it had taken only a few minutes. It looked ordinary. Maybe it actually was. At least, that's what I hoped. The doors opened, and sitting in the driver's seat was a short old lady. White, stringy hair sat like a mop on top of her head. She looked over at us as we came in. I entered the subway last, and that was when she spoke in an old, quiet voice. "I wondered when the time would come." She paused. "Start-in is in desperate need of another sensei, especially an elemental master." She smiled and looked back towards the tracks in front of her without saying another word. How had she known? The door shut, and the old train started to move. Only a few seconds passed before it shot down the track at a tremendous speed, the wheels rattling loudly. I looked out the side windows and saw cracked pillars and more walls of graffiti fly past. It seemed normal so far. But then I glanced back to the front. The tunnel lights came to an end up ahead, and only darkness lay after that. As the subway got closer to the shadow, it started to darken. A misty gloom overtook the walls and seats as wisps of shadow flew by. "What's going on?" I asked shakily. The old lady answered from her seat. "I have been providing passage to Start-in for many, many years. You need not feel fear here." What was going on? I looked at my parents, but they seemed completely fine, even a little eager. Sam, on the other hand, was terrified. He was cowering in his seat and staring with unmoving eyes at the darkness. We had almost reached it. 5, 4, 3, 2... I closed my eyes and braced for impact. But the collision never came. Instead, the subway only seemed to speed up. I opened my eyes to find that the darkness had now completely overtaken the vehicle. It looked like nothing more than a shadow. That's when I realized what it was. The subway was riding the shadows of the tunnel. It seemed to be going at the speed of light, but before I knew it, the darkness melted away, and the subway had returned back to normal. We were now sailing down a tunnel that was newer than the one before. "Where are we now?" I asked my mom. "San Jose," she answered simply without effect. "What? But that's next to San Francisco. There's no way," I began, taken aback. "Yes, there is. It's called the Subway of Shadow for a reason," she interrupted. We slowed at the coming station and finally came to a sudden, deliberate stop. Boys and girls climbed aboard with their parents beside them. "Why did no one else get on at our stop?" I asked my mom as a young girl brushed past my arm. "Most people left earlier today," she told me. The doors shut, and what was an empty car was now packed with people chatting about starting. They all looked very excited. "So, do all these people have powers?" I asked her. She shushed me. "No, but don't you say anything. They'll most likely be jealous," she said crossly. Once again, the train's rickety wheels started turning, and it swept down the tracks. Up ahead was the main tunnel, but a side tunnel veered off to the right. The subway car turned when it came to that tunnel and continued down this tunnel. The old shabby appearance came back, and it filled the tunnel with a musty smell all too familiar to subway tunnels. An end to the tunnel lights came into view up ahead, but everyone seemed to know what would happen. As expected, the scene replayed itself, and the second we were supposed to hit the darkness, the train turned shadowy. A moment later, it returned to normal, and we sped down another hidden tunnel. It halted to a stop when we reached the station, and that's when everyone started pouring out of the cars. "Come on," my mom said haughtily, after almost everyone had gotten off. After the last few people followed us out, the doors shut and the entire train suddenly vanished. I now stared at an empty tunnel. No one else thought it was out of the ordinary at all. My parents stopped to talk with some other adults, so I wandered around the station. Kids were talking and laughing with one another, and most already had good friends. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw James, Ben's brother, standing in one corner of the station. I realized that he must have been going to the school also. But if he was, then why wasn't Ben? I scanned the entire platform one last time to see if there was anyone else I knew before going over to him. "Hey, Alex, this is your first year, right?" he asked after noticing me. "Yeah, I didn't know you came here. Why isn't Ben here then? He's my age," I wondered. "Oh, he didn't get invited," he answered. "But he doesn't know about the school or anything about our world, so don't tell him," he added quickly. "Oh, okay," I answered slowly. Now I understood why my mom had to keep it a secret. "What year are you in?" I asked after realizing I had been silent for a little too long. "My 6th, so I have 2 years to go still. But I finally don't have to take Art of Silence anymore." I didn't know what he meant by that, so instead I answered with another question. "How about your role?" I remembered the roles that my parents had told me earlier in the summer. Gold Ninja, Gold Samurai, Silver Ninja, and Silver Samurai. "I'm a Gold Ninja. How about you? I mean, what role do you want to be?" He quickly corrected himself, remembering that I was a new student. My parents had already told me I was going to be a sensei, but he didn't know that. "I'm not sure yet. Maybe a ninja," I lied. "Good choice," he laughed. "Guess I'll see you around then. Good luck," he told me, turning around and hurrying up the steps to what I guessed were the sidewalks of San Francisco. A few seconds later, he disappeared into the sea of people. That's when I was grabbed from behind. "Well, if it isn't Alex," the person said rudely. It was Bill, and it looked like he wasn't alone. 2 boys stood behind him. "You? How are you here?" I snapped, partially mad and partially stunned. "Yeah, I know. It came as quite a surprise to me, but here I am, and here are my new friends. Meet Mason and Daniel, the superior replacements to Asher." He smirked. His new friends laughed, probably because he would beat them up if they didn't. Superior. Pretty good vocabulary for someone with the mind and face of a 3-year-old, I spat. "You really want to go there?" he muttered, raising his fists. I took a step back as Bill swung one towards me. It hit my shoulder instead of my chest, but I still felt my whole arm go numb. Before Bill could do anything else, dirt sprang up out of the ground and held his feet to the ground. Another moment passed and the dirt was crawling up his body. His arms were pinned to his sides and his legs were trapped together. It encased his whole body except for his head, similar to what I had done the previous time. The station went silent. I glanced over in the direction the dirt had come from and saw a boy who looked only a few years older than me. "Leave him alone. Got that?" he ordered. Everyone watched silently as the scene played out. Bill's face went pale and he nodded stiffly. After a wave of the boy's hand, the dirt sprang back into the crevices in the ground it had come from. Bill fell to the floor, but within a second, leapt up and scrambled out of the subway. His friends stumbled after him. "Thanks," I said to the boy. "It was nothing. Us sensei help each other out," he replied. "So, you're the master of dirt?" I asked him. "Yeah, Mark's the name." "I'm Alex," I told him. He nodded, when suddenly someone called his name. It was another boy who looked about his age. "I guess I'll see you at Starden," he said, walking off. I went back over to my parents and found that they were talking with someone else. "Remember, Master Gosh, a loud noise and you'd be kicked out of the class." Sam was standing off to the side. "You'll be attending in a year," I told him. "If I get in," he said bitterly. "You'll get in," I assured him. He shrugged. I hoped he would. "Make any friends?" my dad asked, after finishing up the conversation with the other adults. "James was here. Oh, and I met the master of dirt," I said. "How was he? I saw something going on over there," my mom mentioned with a raised eyebrow. "Good. He helped me against Bill. Remember him? He's actually attending," I told them. "You mean that bully from your school? How did he get in?" my mom asked, puzzled. I shrugged. Who knew? He'd probably found out about it and threatened them to let him in or something. I laughed at the thought and pulled my parents along. My brother followed after. We walked up the steps into the surface. Once we were in broad daylight, I looked around. Buildings towered all around us, and smells of various foods drifted through the air. This was San Francisco. Thanks again for listening to Alex Rogue and the Crystal Pendant, Chapter 6, The Master of Earth. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have any comments, questions, or critiques, we'd love to hear from you. Hashtag AlexRogueBook, or visit our YouTube and subscribe, AlexRogueBook, or on Twitter at AlexRogueBook. We hope you tune in next time for Chapter 7, A Trip to the Bank, where Alex learns a little bit more about Starden's deep secrets. Alex Rogue and the Crystal Pendant was written by Ryan Russon and narrated by me, Jordan Levine. Scoring was composed and recorded by Ryan Russon. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.